Hello and welcome to Matt's Mosh Pit, and tonight I am going to be telling you my favorite albums of 2024. But before I get started, I just want to say thank you so much for all the love and support you've shown me and my channel so far. It truly means a lot, and I could not do this without you. So folks, I should stress ahead of time, and I want to apologize if my voice doesn't sound right. I am doing this. I have a cold. Some of you may know that I just went on a vacation in Europe and I completely came back sick. So I had a great time, and shout out to France, Germany, and Austria. Your people are awesome. It's a beautiful country, all that good stuff. But anyway, as luck would have it, I came back under the weather. So I'm going to try to do this without coughing or anything like that. But I just wanted to get this out because, hey, it's the end of the year, and I think everybody's putting out their videos, and everybody's got their different takes on things and whatnot. I'm going to stress the fact that in my list, it's not in any specific order. I don't really like the rankings from like 1 to 10 or whatever, because in a weird sort of way, it really depends on my mood. So whatever's number, let's say 10 or even 11, 12, whatever, could be number one tomorrow, or it could have been number one yesterday, or vice versa. So I kind of have a hard time making a definitive, this is definitely the number one. So what I really did was I looked back at all of the albums, and the albums that I gravitated towards more, and just the albums that I played a lot more. And unfortunately, I don't actually use Spotify. I know a lot of people in this time put their little Spotify playlist or their Spotify year in review up. I actually don't use Spotify, so I don't have that. That would actually be pretty easy if I could just pop that up and oh yeah, you listen to this all the time. But unfortunately, I don't have that. So I'm just going to give you the albums that I guess I've listened to the most in 2024. I should also mention that this list is, the bands that I have, featured and whatnot. I personally think they're all extremely talented, but it has nothing to, you guys know, if you've been following the channel, that I know nothing. I don't play an instrument. I'm not an engineer. I don't have any background in music. So, it really has nothing to do with, I'd say, technical prowess. It's more, hey, what sounds good to me? It's not to slight any of the bands on my list, actually. I think they're all extremely talented. But, I know some people would go, oh, well, this album has got much, so many more riffs and, crazier, harder things to do, all of that kind of stuff. And, quite frankly, I think there's other people on other channels that can kind of break that stuff down and whatnot. And so their list may be vastly different from mine. Mine is really just, quite frankly, what sounded good to me and, what I'm drawn to. So if you're looking for that technical, this person, nailed 50 million perfectly clean notes and whatnot, that's not here. So anyway, just warning you ahead of time. The very first one that came to mind when I was doing this list was Seven Spires, A Fortress Called Home. And Seven Spires was a band that I got to see earlier in the year, and their album had not come out, but they had, I think this is their fourth album, but they had 3 albums out prior, and I checked it out, and I enjoyed them. So I got to see them live, and unfortunately for me, they were like the opening band, so they didn't really get, like, they just had a simple backdrop, and I think they sounded great and they performed great, but when you listen to the album, you realize how theatrical the band really is. And it's a band that I absolutely hope they get a huge headlining gig to where they can be full on theatrics, because I feel like when you listen to the music, you're just taken into a whole movie, and you're following, if I'm correct, I think their albums actually are almost concept albums, and they follow a person's journey. And all I know is A Fortress Called Home is so fun to listen to. And it's one of those where you really have to listen to the whole thing. It just takes you on this journey from start to finish. And, I can't even tell you like specific songs to check out, because you really should check out the whole album from start to finish. It's amazing, and I found myself listening to it way more after I saw them live. And I actually got an opportunity to meet Adrienne, the lead singer, at that show, and she was super, super cool. But like I said, the album came out, I believe, like a month or so after I got to see them, and so I was really intrigued. Checked the album out, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And it's made me go back to their other discography and check that out. Now I'm a huge, huge fan of Seven Spires, and definitely need to see them again so I can really fully appreciate their live show. So if you haven't checked it out, you absolutely need to check out A Fortress Called Home by Seven Spires. Next up is Rotting Christ Pro Cristo. And I have to say, I think I did Rotting Christ. It was the very first time I had actually heard Rotting Christ was on this channel. It was suggested that I check out the song Like Father, Like Son. And I remember actually doing the reaction, and the name threw me off because it just seemed so, I don't know, far-fetched. It just seemed like the ultimate like metal name, for lack of better terms, the ultimate rebellion name. And I remember kind of goofing on that, but and not really expecting much. And so I did the reaction, and it just blew me away. Like the song Like Father, Like Son was amazing. And it really just, struck a chord. I have a son, and, I don't know, it just brought all kinds of, great, feels, for lack of better terms. And so I immediately, when the album came out, I checked it out. And keep in mind, like, they've had a long history, and I have not heard a single thing from them. So Pro Cristo was the very first album that I heard from them, and it just blew my mind. It was amazing, and it's just got this like this driving, it's epic. It has this driving like energy to it, and I just honestly, I play it all the time. I've just fallen in love with it. And I did go back to check out some of the other albums, and I love, those are great as well. But Pro Cristo, I think, is it's the first one for me. So a lot of times when you find a band and it's the very, whatever that first album is, you have a soft spot for. So I'm still in the honeymoon phase, for lack of better terms, with this particular album and this particular band. It very similar to the Seven Spires album. I feel like it just kind of takes you on a journey, and it just gives you that awesome feeling. And so there almost isn't like one particular song to call out. I did mention Like Father, Like Son, and that one really, hit me in the heartstrings, I'd say. But really the whole album, it's one of those that, like, if I put it on, I'm finishing the whole thing. So Pro Cristo is another album that you absolutely should check out if you haven't already. The next album on my list is Starfire by Darko US. And actually, it depends on, I think, where you live in the world, if it's just called Darko. I think the band is supposed to be called Darko. But I know on like Amazon, it's called Darko US. So it depends on, I think, where you are in the country. But I'm going to call him Darko because I'm pretty sure that's the name they want to go by. But it's a side project from Tom Barber of Chelsea Grin. And he's got a partner who's a DJ. So he's a drummer also. And I think he's the drummer of Chelsea Grin as well. But either way, he's got like an electronica EDM kind of background. And then you've got Tom Barber with Chelsea Grin with the deathcore background. And it's just the merge of the two. And it is one of the greatest, like I can't get enough of this album. It's so cool because it's all over the place. You may have one song that's like EDM style, then you've got another song that's like a pop, almost like a boy bandy type of thing, and then you have songs that are like deathcore. It's all mixed up and it's just done perfectly. It's I can't even really describe them, but I always tell people, definitely check out Darko or Darko US if you want. They've got a couple albums and they're all fantastic. Starfire is the latest one. It came out in June, I believe, and I love it. It's just a fun album. It's great if you're doing any kind of like exercising or going to the gym. If you're doing cardio, that's the album for you. It's so good. And so definitely check out Starfire by Darko US. I might be biased, but I can't do this list without doing anything referencing Iron Maiden. And so as luck would have it, this year we got 3 albums from each of the frontmen of Iron Maiden. And I believe it started out with Bruce Dickinson and his Mandrake project. And then we got Blaze Bayley with Circle of Stone. And then this summer, we got the final release from Paul Di'Anno, R.I.P., it's called Warhorse. And I will say that each one, I liked each one of them, and they all had for different reasons. And if you're a fan of Paul Di'Anno and his vocals and whatnot, definitely check out that Warhorse album. It was honestly, I had really low expectations, believe it or not, and it actually, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But when I think the big I'd say grudge match, for lack of better terms, was the fact that Blaze's album came out, I believe, a couple weeks after Bruce's album. So they were both fresh in my head at the same time. And so you can't help but compare. And at the time, I remember thinking Blaze's album was more fun to listen to, but Bruce's album was just better, whether it be technical or just more detailed, but that was pretty much kind of the thought that I had. And I almost still stand by that, in the fact that like I really do enjoy Blaze's album and it's a lot of fun. But if I had to pick one for, out of all of the 3 frontmen, I definitely have to go with the Mandrake Project from Bruce Dickinson. I listened to it yesterday and it still holds up. It sounds great. And actually, it's one of those albums that I think at first I was, I went in with like the highest expectations out of the other 2 albums. And it kind of, it needed a couple listens, for lack of better terms, but it definitely absolutely grows on you, and it's just an amazing album. I think if anything, if I were Bruce, one thing I probably would have changed was all of the other things that went along with the album. Like, not only did they put the album out, and it's kind of a semi-concept album, but they also put out a comic book, and it just seemed like there was a lot of other things going, and they really should have just focused on the music, I think. Because if you just put that album out without all the other, comic book and all the other hype that went around it, I think people would have embraced it a lot more. And not that they didn't. I think the album's actually done pretty well. But for me, I think the album, the music alone, just completely stands up to anything. And I am a sucker, and I went and I got the comic book stuff as they've been coming out and whatnot, and I've enjoyed them. But in a weird sort of way, I think it was almost a little bit too much to throw at the same time. But the album itself is fantastic. It's definitely got to be on my list for, best albums of the year, because it's just, each song, just grows on you. And I'll be honest with you, like Rain on the Graves, for example, the first time I heard it, I was just like, okay, it's catchy, but whatever. But, now it's like one of my favorite songs, and then there's just so many songs that just grow on you. Like Resurrection Man is a great song. if you haven't checked the album out, you absolutely should check it out. So yeah, Bruce Dickinson, The Mandrake Project is a must listen if you haven't already. Up next, we have Assemble the Chariots, Unyielding Night. And this is a band that was so interesting to me. I had never heard them before, and I remember the album came out, and it was one of those, like, Friday when music comes out, I kind of check to see which like metal albums come out, and I said to myself, I'm like, I think I've heard that name before, and I don't know where I've heard the name before, but either way, I decided to check the album out, and I just completely was blown away and fell in love with them, because it was so cinematic. Like, this album is insane. It's like, as soon as you hit play, you entered into this like science fiction, crazy movie. It's a movie. It's basically like a movie, and it's so great. What I liked about it was so different, and it's very similar to how I mentioned Riding Christ and Seven Spires, where there isn't like one particular song that you can like call out. You just literally have to hit play and go for the whole album, because you're committed to be in this movie. You're committed to go on this journey with the band, and it is so great. And the only thing one thing I would kind of compare it to, if you watch a lot of these videos, like if you're watching my video, you've probably seen other people's videos of albums of the year and whatnot. And a lot of people I've seen so far are highlighting the Blood Incantation album. And if you listen to that album, it's very technical, but it goes from like death metal to like Pink Floyd to like, it's all over the place. This is very similar to that. But, once again, I can't speak to the technical aspect of it. But for my ears, I like this album better than the Blood Incantation album, because it just, I don't know, it just plays to me, they both do the same kind of thing, but this one it just hits my ears better, as far as like, you just feel like you're in a sci-fi movie, and it just sounds cool, and I love it. I will say they're very, very heavy on the blast beats, so if you're not a fan of blast beats, it may not be for you, but I definitely think you should check it out, because it's so cool. Like I said, when you can just hit play and you just go on this like crazy journey, and like I said, you don't even need to know what the song titles are. You just run with it. You just put it on and go, and you're in. Like, I don't know, if you like science fiction movies and whatnot, check this album out. It's so great. So once again, it's Assemble the Chariots, Unyielding Night, and fantastic. Definitely go check it out. If you're a fan of this channel, I have to highlight Time by Infected Rain. Infected Rain is one of my personal favorite bands. It was the very first interview of a band that I did for this channel with Lena from Infected Rain, and I still have fond memories of that. It was just so cool. They are literally the nicest people ever. And so I was so excited to, hear their album when it first came out. I believe it came out in February this year, and it did not disappoint. Like, Infected Rain is one of those bands that I think are highly, highly underrated. And absolutely, if you get an opportunity, go see them live. Lena and the whole band, they're just ferocious live. So you definitely need to check them out. But absolutely check out Time by Infected Rain. I believe it's their best in their discography. I love it from start to finish, and it's just fantastic. And once again, I love it because they're such good people. They deserve all the success that they get, and I think more people should check them out. They're very, very underrated. So yes, so check out Time by Infected Rain. Next up is Yesterwind by Nightwish. And as you guys know, if you've been watching this channel, This is my Nightwish album. And, we always talk about it like, when you first listen to a band or find a band, whatever album it was that you were listening to, that is like your album. And this is the year where I actually got to do a deep dive on Nightwish and learn some of their old stuff. But it was the first year where I got to prepare for a new album. And so it was super exciting because, I actually had I fell in love with the band, and I really, really appreciated their old stuff. And then I got to wait, just like all of you, for the new album to come out. So I got to see the individual, releases, and then, be there on day one when the album came out. And so I got to have that full feeling, and it did not disappoint. I love this album from start to finish. And I know a lot of people complained about like the mix or whatever of Perfume of the Timeless. I loved it. And maybe it's, I don't have a technical ear or whatever, but I love that song, especially just the very end when the male vocal kicks in. It's fantastic. But I loved all of their singles that they put out, let alone the full album. And a lot of times, I think most of the list that I'm telling you guys, just hit play and just completely finish it out. There's no reason to, pick out one song over another song. Just hit play, hear the whole thing out. That's typically how I like to enjoy my music. So a lot of times, when you go, what's your favorite song? It's hard for me to say because it's like I listen to the whole thing and it's like, oh, this section is super cool or whatnot. But this is another one where from start to finish, I think it's fantastic. You should definitely check out Yesterwind by Nightwish if you haven't already. This was a great year if you're into like the new wave of British heavy metal. As I mentioned in the past, we've already had, 3 albums from the Iron Maiden lead singers. And, we had an album from Judas Priest. But I will say this, my absolute favorite album of that genre, for lack of better terms, that came out in 2024 is Saxon's Hellfire and Damnation. This one completely surprised me. I remember when the album came out, I just did a reaction to Saxon for the very first time. I'd never heard them before, and I really enjoyed it, but I really wasn't sure how I would, feel about like a whole album. And so I took a waiver on it, as they say, and I got the album, and I just fell in love with it. It's so much fun. It's just it's such a fun album, and this is one of those albums where I think like as you're driving down the road, like that's the album you want to listen to. It's just super cool. I will say my favorite song is Madame Guillotine. I love it, and so it's just a great album from start to finish. It's another one which I keep saying from start to finish. I think every album on my list at this point is don't just pick certain songs, go listen to it from start to finish. This one just amazed me, and it made me go back and check out all of the other, Saxon albums. But this one definitely holds a soft spot in my heart because it's the first one that I listened to. And I just love it. I listen to it all the time, and it never gets old. It just has such a great feel to it. And so if you haven't checked it out, Hellfire and Damnation from Saxon, absolutely go check it out. Next up, we have Phantoma by Unleash the Archers. Unleash the Archers is one of those bands that from the moment I heard them, I fell in love with them. And then I found out that each album is like a concept album, which is even better because I love that, the whole start to finish, folks. But there's something about this band that just sounds so amazing to me. And this band, once again, I've mentioned that I don't really have any, I don't know how technically great somebody is or isn't, but for me, this is a band that sounds so technically strong that, I would be shocked if somebody was like, they're not really that great, because they just sound like they know what they're doing. They're just awesome. And I got to see them live for the first time this year, and it was amazing. But anyway, they put out Phantoma, and Phantoma, it's really tough because their last two albums were so great. And my expectations were just extremely high. And I'll be honest with you, Phantoma, at first, when I first listened to it, I wasn't quite sure if once again, if it was going to compete with the previous work. And I enjoyed it, but it's definitely one that's grown on me over time, and I love this album at this point. I do think they got some bad, unfortunately for them, they got some bad press because the whole album deals with like the future and AI and whatnot. And from what I understand, they used like ChatGPT or AI for a few of the lyrics within one particular song that was involving AI, which I personally think is very creative and it's artistic, and that's the expression they wanted to show. But I believe some people looked at it as like cheating, which is really weird because if you go back and look at their previous work, come on, these people are top notch and they're amazing. And so, anyway, I do feel bad for them from that perspective because there should be no negative press around this album. It's so good, and I've listened to it multiple times and love it. And each time it gets better and better for me. So you should definitely check out Phantoma by Unleash the Archers. Next up is The Black by Imminence, and this is one where I did a reaction. Somebody had suggested that I check out the song Heaven Shall Burn, and I did the reaction, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and it just got me immediately. It was one of those where I saw this guy doing like metalcore music with a violin, and it just blew me away. I hadn't seen anything like that before, and I immediately had to check out more from them. And then, as luck would have it, this album comes out, and I checked it out, and it is so great. There's something about the violin with the mixed in with the metalcore that just works. It's so cool. And it just adds this cool flavor to the album that makes it stand out. Like a lot of times, I've checked out a lot of metalcore bands recently, and a lot of times, some start to just sound the same and whatnot. Then there's bands that just, take it up that, extra notch. And this is definitely one of those bands that does that. And I don't know if it's the violin, I don't know if it's the lead singer's voice, whatever it is, it definitely stands out, and it should absolutely check it out. It's super cool. It's such a great album. So it's The Black by Imminence. The last album on my list is You Won't Go Before You're Supposed To by Knocked Loose. And folks, if you've been a fan of this channel, I've mentioned this album a few times, and I just love it. It's one of those bands where I know they're getting a ton of press at this point because of the Jimmy Kimmel performance, and they've gotten, it's really strange for a band like Knocked Loose to be in the the mainstream in a weird sort of way is just an amazing feat when you think about it. But I will say the very first time that I heard Knocked Loose, I didn't get it, and I just did not understand it. I listened to a couple songs, and I'm like, I just don't understand. Like, they played Coachella, and I believe like Billie Eilish had to make sure she was there. It was a whole thing. And so I'm sitting there going, what is this all about? I really just didn't get it. Like, it sounded fine, but I didn't get the big buzz, like, what puts them at Coachella and all these places, until I saw a YouTuber explaining, his philosophy on it. And he was saying how, the vocals basically, they're like everyman vocals, for lack of better terms, because when you look at like this style of music, you can't really sing along. Like you really can't sing along to like Lorna Shore or, some of these like really aggressive bands, because, the death growls and whatnot, they're not easy to do. Like if you're in your car, it's hard to sing along. You can bob your head and all that good stuff, but very difficult to sing along. And with Knocked Loose, he has like the everyman, like scream, just the sheer frustration, where you feel like you can join in. And so it was suggested that like you listen to Knocked Loose when you're in traffic. And I will say this, when I am frustrated and I'm in traffic and it's just standstill traffic, I put Knocked Loose on. Knocked Loose just gives me that vibe. There's a movie came out in the 90s, I believe, called Falling Down, and it's about a guy who's just, living his normal life, and then things just don't go his way too many times, and then he just kind of goes off the rails. And it's Knocked Loose gives me those vibes. Like if you're ever just having one of those bad days and things just aren't going your way and whatnot, I swear, put this album on and it'll just make you hey, you know what? I got a couple, brothers in this band that feel the exact same way I do, and you just let it all out. I now am in love with this album, and this is the album that got me into Knocked Loose, and I've checked out their previous stuff since, and I love that as well. It's definitely an album you want to check out, and give it, maybe check it out with the lens that I just presented, because a lot of times, like I said, it can be a little off-putting if you just go put it on. But if you think about just the sheer frustration, imagine yourself in traffic, all this kind of stuff, and then put the album on, you're going to have a totally different experience, and hopefully you'll appreciate it the way I do. Okay, folks, so those are my favorite albums of the year. And so absolutely, I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what your favorite albums are, because just like you, if you're watching this, I love watching other people's lists of, what their favorite albums are. Not only do I like it when they highlight albums that I also like, but I also get to learn albums that maybe just missed my radar. And, it's always good to see new stuff. So please, 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 let me know what your favorite albums are. And, if you disagree with my list, it's perfectly fine. It's my list. I still love these albums no matter what. But, just let me know. Comments are everything. But before I go, I really just want to say thank you so much for this year. This year has been amazing. It's been better than I could have ever expected. And you guys really, really have just, helped me along the way as far as, giving me the confidence to go out and actually make these videos. You're quite frankly giving me the excuse to go to as many concerts as I've gone to this year, and, even traveling across the, Atlantic to see a concert. It's just been really just such an amazing year, and I really can't thank you guys enough. The fact that people watch this and leave comments and are part of this cool little group that we've created, it just means the world to me, and I really, just from the bottom of my heart, I really can't say thank you enough for all of your support. The subscriptions, all of that, it just truly means a lot. And I can't wait to see what happens next year with this channel. So just once again, thank you very much, and I will see you next time.